We have now reached Kamran Bokhari. He is the Senior Director for the Eurasian Security and Prosperity at the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy in Washington. Kamran, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Natasha.
Kamran, the press conference that we carried earlier in the day with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, the Jordanian Foreign Minister, and the U.S. Secretary of State was quite powerful in that we heard from not only the two foreign ministers, but also a number of reporters really pushing against Israel and demanding a ceasefire. One Al Jazeera reporter went as far as to say, what has Israel in fact achieved in all of the killing that's been taking place? So I wonder, from your perspective, is there a sort of anger bubbling within the Middle East?
There's certainly anger bubbling in the Middle East, and we're seeing it's reverberate here, even in the West. There's a protest taking place in Washington, D.C., a pro-Palestinian protest. So yes, I mean, there is the anger, but we're in a conundrum. So on one hand, the Israelis cannot just sort of say, okay, we got attacked on October 7th, and we're going to do some military operations and then quit, because it sends the wrong message to the other side that you can do whatever you want. We will, react here and there, but in the end, we're not going to do much about it. So there is that. On the other hand, the Israelis face the big conundrum of how do you effect regime change in Gaza, dismantle the Hamas ruling structures and not end up killing a whole lot of civilians. So that is terribly difficult to do. I don't think the Israelis have an idea on how to do it. They're trying different things with this idea of, okay, let's evacuate the northern part. Easier said than done. We're talking 2.2 million people in all of Gaza. If you squeeze them into the southern half, that creates a bigger humanitarian crisis. It really upsets Egypt. And then, of course, the Jordanians are looking at this with great trepidation.
We've seen week after week thousands and thousands of young people come out to protest. They're protesting for a ceasefire. They're protesting for Palestinian rights. And at times it's gotten quite aggressive. There's been a lot written about concern that this could, well, as we heard the Jordanian foreign minister say, this could make it permissible to see more violence and killing. What's your read on that?
I would say that is exactly what Hamas and Iran wanted when they decided to go ahead with this attack. Did they not know that the Israelis were in response to an unprecedented kind of attack, react this way? They did. Certainly they did. They want that kind of pressure being built up because that's how they undermine the Abraham Accords, and that's how they undermine the new environment that was developing prior to October 7th, with even Saudi Arabia negotiating very publicly with the Israeli government. So that is something that they wanted to counter, and they were squeezed otherwise. Iran, in its own way, Hamas within the Gaza Strip, and then of course there's the opportunity in the West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority is approaching, a transition, and there are the Palestinian Authority is riddled with corruption, with an aging leadership and divisions. Hamas wants to benefit from that. So this is all part of a calculus, and within it, the civilian loss of life is part of that calculus. And it's unfortunate that it's Machiavellian, but that's the way it is.
So if it's Machiavellian, then let me ask you, how should people who are concerned about this conflict and genuinely concerned about the welfare of ordinary, innocent civilians in Gaza, how do they respond and not play into what Hamas wants?
And that is the most difficult thing to do. I think that is the million-dollar question here for everybody, not just people who are protesting, concerned about the loss of civilian life, but even Israel, the United States, Egypt, Jordan, all the stakeholders. I would even say that, having listened to the speech of the Hezbollah leader yesterday, that it's not like they are ready for conflict. They have to calculate as well. So this thing could get out of hand, and it could result in a lot of damage for many actors. So it's not easy. So how do you, again, go in and weaken Hamas and not create a humanitarian crisis, not end up killing so many civilians. And there aren't any good examples. I mean, we have U.S. regime change efforts in Afghanistan and Iraq, and everybody knows how they went. And they lasted far longer. They were far bigger battle spaces, and regime change is not easy. And therefore, there isn't a solution. Those who are going to call for ceasefire, that's their imperative, and justifiably so. Those who, if you're Israeli and you want to be able to make sure that Hamas does not become emboldened by this, then they're going to do what they have to do in the end. And can both imperatives be somehow balanced? I think that's the challenge for the Biden White House. I think this is probably the biggest test of the Biden White House. And in many ways, I would argue it is even bigger than the war in Ukraine.
Why is that?
Because in the war in Ukraine, there isn't a whole lot at stake. The United States it has an broad understanding with Russia. There have been negotiations all throughout this conflict that, okay, neither the Russians want a war that gets out of hand, and neither do the Americans want the Russians to be defeated completely. It's not a zero-sum game. Here it's different. Here you're not looking at two state actors or two sides, two camps. Here you're looking at a non-state actor that has hijacked the Palestinian, right to self-determination, the Palestinian nationalist cause, for its own ideological and geopolitical purposes, and it's backed by Iran. So it's a complexity here, and you see the Biden administration officials struggling to put out what is a growing fire.
Kamran, I'm so glad you mentioned this idea of there's not two sides. I've been having this conversation repeatedly with colleagues about even the way we reference this. If you're on the Israeli side or Palestinian side, it's not that clear cut. There's a multitude of perspectives both in Israel and in the Palestinian territories, as well as the larger Middle East. So it just isn't as clear cut. You can hold multiple positions at the same time. Multiple things can be true at the same time. So that also lends itself to how complicated this particular battle and this war is. Let me ask you about this. When this war does end, and we don't know when that's going to happen, from all accounts, it's not going to happen anytime soon. What happens to Gaza? What's your best sense of who is going to be responsible for that territory?
Again, a very difficult question. Let me try to answer it. I recently published a piece on Thursday morning on this, trying to make sense of what could happen. So look, the first order of business is how quickly does Israel, neutralize Hamas, for lack of a better term? We can't completely, get rid of it, but neutralize its ability and imposes a military defeat. So that's the big question. Hamas, on the other hand, is trying to emulate what Hezbollah did in 2006 in the Israel-Lebanese war of that year, where it prevented Israel. After a 33-day war, Israel was not able to impose a military defeat on Hezbollah. Hamas wants to do the same thing, drag it out for as long as possible in order to avoid that sort of military defeat. So we don't know, and they're counting on rising casualties, growing pressure on the United States, growing pressure on the Arab governments. So that's their calculus. Now let's assume that somehow, because Israel is militarily superior than Hamas, far superior, that let's say it does basically collapse the Hamas regime. Then the big question is, the Israelis will have to occupy this territory, because if you dismantle a regime, as we've seen in U.S. efforts in Afghanistan and Iraq, you bear the responsibility of putting up a new one. Now, obviously, you can't do it by yourself. You're going to have the Egyptians involved. They don't want a fallout of this on their territory. You're going to have Jordanians involved. And then bringing in the Palestinian Authority that I already mentioned is in so much chaos within the West Bank is not going to be easy. So even if, first, we don't know whether for certain whether Israel will be able to militarily neutralize Hamas fast enough before the pressure mounts for a ceasefire. Let's say it does, and then what is that regime? You can collapse a regime, but how do you build a new one? And that will have reverberations across the region. And so this is not the usual Israel, Gaza, Hamas, Israel war that we've gotten used to in the last 15 years, where there's rocket fire followed by Israeli military action, and then a few weeks later you have a ceasefire. We're in a different space after October 7th.
Okay, Kamran Bokhari, thank you so much for your time.
That's okay.